Now, for those of you who were here during the morning session, it has data and insight. I'm sorry it doesn't have ad recall on it. We're not going to talk about ad recall, but sorry, data and insight. We will, however, try to make insight more actionable. I think that was kind of the point around calling out on insight. And when we talk about data, we will be sure to qualify what kind of data we're talking about. Now, with that, the way we planned this session is I'm going to talk about what data cleanrooms are at first, and what Meta's data cleanroom solution, we call it advanced analytics, what that is. So that's probably about 5 to 7 minutes of that. And then I will invite Trent up to talk about some of the success cases on advanced analytics and data cleanroom. And then we'll be joined by Raf to have a discussion on their journey of data cleanroom and advanced analytics. So with that, let's start on data cleanrooms, what that is in general, and what we're going to talk about. Well, data cleanrooms are kind of a technology solution where it's a collaborative solution where you can bring in your own data, combine multiple data sources together, and then build your own analysis, right? And any data architecture solution which enables you to do that, that's a data cleanroom. Today we are going to talk about publisher data cleanrooms. We're a publisher. We're going to talk about a specific kind of data cleanroom where you can bring in your own data, use all the data that the publisher has access to, all the interaction data that the publisher stores on their platform, and where you can bring in your own data and combine them together and create better actionable insights, more richer actionable insights, right? Now, I'm going to talk about AA, Advanced Analytics. As I said, that's our beta product of data cleanroom. Now, what AA enables you to do is AA enables you to bring in your own data sources. So your first-party data, your rich first-party data that you have access to, you can bring in that data into a privacy-safe environment, match it with the data that we own as Meta. So all the interactions that are happening on our platform, bring in your own data, match it with the data that we have, and create insights that then drives your business actions or strategies that you want to influence, right? How does it work? So it's a data architecture slide. You'll see there is metadata architecture. Metadata is Meta-owned data, not metadata. That's the data that we own. That's all the interaction data that we store. So everything happens on Meta platforms. That's all stored there. Then we have this option to bring in advertiser data, right? So let's say you are an advertiser and you want to figure out, I think Andy previously spoke about new to brand kind of things, right? So you want to figure out who is new to brand and who isn't. And you want to understand whether specific Meta campaigns are driving more new to brand customers. So that's your first party data. You can bring that in and combine that with Meta-owned data, right? You can bring in other partner data sources into this environment as well. As long as there is something that you can match individuals on, you can bring that in. Now, what happens is when you have all those data sources together, it goes through a matching process. We stitch all that together for you to then be ready to analyze the data however you want. Now, I say however you want, but of course it's a privacy-safe analysis that we do, right? So there is no way you can see row-level data, individual-level data, or do any analysis that shows or expose any individual. It has to be always aggregated, and it's fairly common with all publisher data cleanrooms, and to be fair, all data cleanrooms. Any analysis you have to do, it has to be aggregated, usually with a group of 50 or more. So everything is stitched together. It's ready for you to analyze. So it's an SQL-based environment. So as long as you can create some SQL scripts. Most of the publishers will give you some pre-made templates, as we call it. So pre-made SQL scripts on specific general use cases. But for specific use cases, the idea is you create your own analysis, right? And then you run that. It goes through a privacy check, as I said, and then you look at the analysis. Now, of course, we don't, okay, so analyze, leverage, automate, and protect. So as I said, the analysis is done through SQL. You can leverage out-of-the-box templates, so pre-made templates that we will give you based on our understanding of your category, your vertical, on what we think are general use cases for advertiser like you. You will get access to those. But you have the opportunity to customize it any way you want to, right? There is a specific use case that you have thought about and you wanted to get some insight or some evidence for that use case. You are more than welcome to design your own report, your analysis template, and then put that into AA to get the insight that you want. And everything I've said so far, all of that can be automated. So it's not like you have to do it manually, right? You can use an API to automate everything. So you can do it in scale. So, and that's one of the things that a lot of our advertisers want to do. Once they have created a typical analysis, they probably want to do it for, I don't know, 50 campaigns that they have across 3 countries. So all of that can be done through an API. Now, of course, we don't want to do analysis for analysis' sake, right? Like, it has to lead to something. So typically, the framework, like anything that we do, that it goes like this. You come up with a hypothesis, a business question. You come up with a problem, right? Something that you want to solve. Then you are running the analysis. You are either designing your own analysis or using one of the pre-made templates. Based on the analysis, you are getting some evidence, some insights, which then you turn into an action or a strategy. And then I think that's something that we see people missing at times, validating the strategy, right? So that's something, that's kind of the full loop. Like, you come up with a strategy, then you run or trial the strategy, and then you validate the strategy using some mechanism or the other. So AA supports that as well. So you can validate your strategy using the same kind of analysis that like the same kind of analysis you did at the first place to uncover the insights. Highly recommend you validate the strategy with those kind of analysis as well. Now, a lot of words. How does it actually look, right? What it looks like, maybe something like this. Let's say a scenario where you have I'm guessing all of you have some sort of upper funnel campaign, some sort of mid funnel campaign, low funnel campaign, right? So, and one of the things that most of the other measurement approaches probably fail to do is kind of campaign overlap analysis. So if I want to know who are the people who have seen both upper funnel and mid funnel, and their conversion rate, is that any different than people who only saw low funnel, right? So essentially, combining upper funnel and mid funnel, does it help than having mid funnel only? Is there a synergy that we can explore? Now, for that kind of use case, or a data clean room is a great solution. What we can do, we can create as many groups. So when I say upper funnel, mid funnel, these are groups, right? These are sets, if you want. We can create as many sets as we want. We can look at as many intersection or interactions or overlaps as we want to. So here, this example is 4 sets. For a lot of advertisers, it might be a bit simpler than this. It might be just upper funnel and lower funnel. If you have 4 categories of campaigns, it could be something like this. But what happens then is then you're uncovering if the conversion rates are different based on which campaigns people have seen. Then that could result in a strategy where you are either, if you think people who have seen both upper and mid funnel or upper and lower funnel has a higher conversion rate, that could lead to a strategy of investing more on upper funnel, right? And then that's the strategy that you're like the strategy or action that you're driving. And then hopefully you're running a similar analysis again to see does it still, like after the increased spend on upper funnel, does it still hold true? Has it changed? Is it still something that you want to do? Now, this is one of the use cases. This is, of course, like just one use case. As I said, it's up to the users to define what use cases they want to solve. It is flexible. They can figure out what they want to do. with the data that they have, what insights they want to get. But to talk about these use cases more, I will invite Trent up and talk about some of the successes that we had using AA and data clean room. Over to you. You might want to stand here. Oh, okay. You definitely need this.
Cool, thank you, Avok. Well, yes, I know he premised this that I'm going to talk about success cases, but first I want to talk about the failures, because the path to measurement is littered with failures, and if you're testing and learning in this approach, if you're just testing and proving stuff you already know, then you're just obviously repeating to yourself what you already know. You need to gain new insights so that you can action that. So I want to talk about all of our failures. Because how do you fail in order to succeed? So, before we even get into whether you should do incrementality tests, whether you should use MMMs, whether you should do attribution, and the answer is yes, you should be using all those tool sets like other people have talked about. We need to ask, what are we trying to test and why? What is the actual business question that we're trying to ask? And what do we expect that hypothesis to be, right? And then you can move to, have you got enough scale on your conversion points? This comes up a lot in incrementality tests, especially when you're doing your control and expose groups. People might dodge this question. I'm going to try not to. But basically, you want to see, if you're a client and an advertiser that has 10,000s of conversion events, and whatever that conversion event is, whether it's leads or sales, you're going to be relatively okay. You could do with, say, a holdout group of, say, 35% or even lower at 20%. Your budget, therefore, though, you could probably get away with, 60K if you're doing that. And all of these learnings have come from us doing hundreds of tests across many different campaigns and many different advertisers across different verticals. What does that volume look like for that event in the past 30 days? That'll help dictate a little bit of, is this even a viable test? Is it going to kind of prove out my hypothesis? And if the test fails, that's obviously a good insight and learning that you never had before. And then you're going to be able to do something with that, whether that's reinvest your money elsewhere into a different channel, a different creative format, what have you. Really important is upfront developing that clear solution design. So what does that look like? People will talk about, is it a single cell test? Is it a multi-cell test? What are you actually testing? Am I testing my BAU audiences that I've kind of been using in a broad targeting versus sort of, new addressable audiences? Am I using other data partners to intersect that data and get a better understanding of those users, whether it's from a social economic or demographic breakdown? But really taking stakeholders through that and don't overcomplicate it. Usually I put together maybe 4 or 5 slides to really articulate, this is the structure of the campaign, this is the structure of the test, this is what we're hoping is going to be true, but it's actually a good thing if you fail and prove yourself wrong and you lead there. And start simple with your initial tests and then move towards these sophisticated approaches. Like other people have talked about today and made some fantastic points, your incrementality test can help inform your MMM. Your MMM can obviously inform at a very macro level and your channel mix and what that should look like. But it's not going to necessarily help you within that channel do actual tactical changes and optimizations. So they're all going to eventually create this flywheel. And almost the most important, this is the hardest. Don't just regurgitate the results, right? And an insight is only useful, really, if it's an actionable and if I can actually do something with it. I recently told a client that once I intersected the data with Experian, that their insight was that their gamers' audiences indexed highly have more likelihood to have a pet snake than a dog. It's an insight, but it's not a very useful one. So just think about what you're actually doing with these insights and how you're making them actionable. Okay. I am a tech guy, but I'm not going to go through all these slides in detail. I think the results here speak for themselves. We've done more than 120 different, whether they're incrementality tests, conversion lift studies. There's a multitude of different tests that you can obviously experiment and try out. You should do these on an ongoing approach and a test and learn agenda we've heard of. Well, what does this framework actually mean and what does that kind of look like? Again, it comes back to the client's goals. What is the objectives? What are the business questions we're trying to answer and ask? Is the test set up in the right way to be able to do that? We've done various ones against, test and learn for personalized experiences. And don't worry, I'll move on from the failures, but out of all the successes that we've had, learning whether personalized messaging is better than generic messaging. What is the incremental lift that I have? But some of the use cases I'll show, and I know some people love the sexy metrics of success, so I'll get to that soon. But it's about this constant learning and test and learn, iterate on that, and keep using those tests to inform your tactical decisions. So I won't mention any client names, but you could probably guess who they are. But what I want to focus on here is the challenge. So the challenge here was we were very specifically looking at, sort of coffee and coffee churn. And that insight was then going to lead us to inform then the sort of machine learning algorithm to help improve that churn model. But how do we do that? Well, we had to run an experiment. And so by doing that, we used both an exposed and control group with enough volume, like I mentioned, and enough budget to get away. You can run this test. Some of these tests, if you've got enough volume for large clients, you can obviously get away with a couple of weeks testing and a smaller budget. If you run it for 2 months, you're probably going to get, obviously better results, and you're going to get a higher likelihood and chance to get that statistical significance that you need to go, is this actually a causal effect directly from what I'm doing with my audiences? So in this result, we were able to see a 5% increase in the average cups of coffee purchased per customer. But then the other insight that we were able to gain is that we saw a 20+% increase of the average transaction value per customer. And then this became embedded into that framework to inform either the MMM or other attribution tests, as well as the machine learning models. Another client people might be familiar with. The challenge in this is a very sophisticated piece of measurement, but basically, we talk a lot in this industry as well, like how do I improve my return on investment when it comes to my customer data platform? And you can do that obviously through, creation of audiences, suppression of those audiences, reinvest some of that media wastage and put it into other areas or channels. But what we did here as well with Meta AA, we were able to send all of the first-party data and audiences from the CDP, Telium in this case, to Meta AA, and we were able to intersect across a number of campaigns for this client and look at whether those audiences were targeted or not, what was the index, how much likelihood did that have to drive actual conversions, incremental conversions, and lift on return on ad spend. So in this, across a large majority of those segments, those first-party data segments, we saw a 14% increase in incremental revenue. But we broke that further down in the test, of course. I'm not going to go through all those stats, but being able to look at incremental revenue, what is the cost per that incremental sale or booking, you can see how obviously this can then start to improve your investment strategies, your optimization strategies. And the last one, quite a famous beverage brand, one of my favorites. The challenge here, we created a lot of these advanced addressable audiences across a range of portfolio within their product set. And we're really looking to have that data-driven strategy. And we leverage Meta AA in this case, but we also leverage other neutral clean rooms. We have to be agnostic in the technology we select. You notice I haven't really mentioned too much about technology. We need to pick the right tool for the right job. And again, it goes back to that question of what are we actually trying to answer? And if we fail, that's actually a good result. Now you know not to do it. Do something else. So in here we saw double digits is great and very obscure, but a double digit different in the incremental return on ad spend between the top and least performing data sources. And so we were able to then optimize those data sources, optimize towards what data partners should we collaborate with, which data partners do we need to collaborate with in these clean room environments to actually obviously fill the gaps in our data. And how do we get closer to that real purchase data with various data transactional partners. So yeah, another successful case study. But we got there for a lot of failure, a lot of test and learn, and a lot of experience of doing these. So the last thing I'd leave you with, you really want to move, I would argue, from left to right, definitely. If you're doing zero measurement or zero closed measurement, well, you should start. And then, moving towards that ongoing closed loop measurement framework. We talked about the framework. I mean, I hate the word flywheel because I'm a tech person, but definitely it should all inform all of your strategies, and all of these tools have a place and a value. It's not one or the other, and if anyone argues in market and goes, only go with MMMs, that person's wrong. You know, you can then move towards the development of these custom multi-touch attribution windows. You can have a longer look-back window, which is going to be really important for some advertisers and some verticals. You know, I think sometimes we forget we're human and how we actually book, you know, flights, or how we actually do any of the activities that we sometimes try and measure. And then moving towards obviously advancing that analysis. You can do it in this privacy-safe manner. I'm glad we've moved towards that as an industry, to be able to query the underlying user-level data, but get these aggregated outputs. And then again, it's establishing that robust method for leveraging data. So how do you inform your campaign performance? How do you inform those optimizations? Not just insight as a buzzword. So now I'd like to invite Avik back up and Raf from PepsiCo, so we can dive a little bit more further into success and failure. Thank you.
Thanks, Trent. Thank you. Yep. Right. Okay. So let's go. Raf, we might start with you. If you want to do a quick introduction and just tell us about what you do. Like, of course, I think everyone knows what PepsiCo is, but maybe what you do and what you focus on.
Yeah, sure. So CDNA. So I've been managing CDNA for the past few years, and you know, it's not a very descriptive role. Long story short, I've been dealing a lot in. Well, I was charged this data platform for media activations meant in Australia, which for us involved a lot of data strategy, data collaboration, data planning. So been working really closely with these guys to develop those things, enabling our personalization at scale agenda, and then doing all the transformation that is required in the business for such a thing to happen. So yeah, so I think in a nutshell, that was it.
Cool. Trent?
Yeah, sure. I love long titles. So I am the Director of Data Collaboration and Data Partnerships, but essentially what that means, like for Analect, across all of OMG Group, we have some wonderful clients that we get to work with. And I get the benefit of both diving directly into the platforms and running queries and creating all the SQL logic behind these multi-touch attribution models or incrementality tests. But I also manage a lot of our data partnerships as well. So working inside of neutral clean rooms or platform clean rooms, you know, which are the right data partners that we should partner with? How do we do that for our clients? Where does that fill the gap in their kind of first-party data strategy? So.
Okay, so we'll probably start with you. In terms of number of measurement tools we have available, there is no shortage of measurement tools. Like, one might argue that we have a few more than we need, right?
One might.
One might. Now, with that, why do we need data clean rooms? Like, with data clean rooms, what are the things that you're unlocking that other, like, where is the limitation of other measurement solutions where you're actually using data clean rooms? Is there a need? What are the use cases?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to what you're wanting to do and test out as a business. I mean, there is a lot of tools, and they all have their own place. You know, I think, you know, obviously if I'm spinning on Meta and I need to use Meta AA to look at the granularity of that data and that user level data, I can change the look back window like I kind of mentioned, and that's necessary, but it's not going to just stop there, you know. And so using neutral clean rooms as well, I mean, I'm glad as an industry we've moved towards privacy focused and privacy enhancing technologies. And essentially that just means, like, if I'm a client that doesn't really have a massive amount of first-party data, maybe I don't own the transactional point or the purchase point. You know, what are the right partners for me to kind of analyze in the market and work with? And so these neutral clean rooms at least allow you to obviously query that data, understand more about it, intersect with, say, an Experian to understand the demographics and breakdown of that audience, and build, you know, what we at least call like advanced or addressable audiences, to be able to leverage them in any platform that you need to, where the users are. So, like, that's the key of it, I think.
Raf, same question. You have been using advanced analytics for a while now. What made you implement advanced analytics, and what have been the key use cases that you have unlocked with AA that you haven't had been able to do before?
I'll say it has been a journey for us, right? Sure. So I think this is, let's say, the third year that we're using it, right? So I think we didn't probably start the best way. But now I think we're in a good spot where we're also looking at our test and learn agenda in a holistic level, right? So what's everything that we want to learn for the year? What is everything that we want to learn from all types of campaigns and through the funnel? And then what are the tools that are going to enable us to learn what we want to learn, right? And then, so yes, we do have a lot of tools, but I feel like they each have their purpose as well. So then we need to ask ourselves if the platforms that we're using are giving us the answers that we're looking for, basically, right? So then for like an advanced perspective, so for those more advanced type of work and where we're using data and that data collaboration and all that kind of thing, we need a more refined measurement attached to that as well, right? So
you mentioned that you didn't start the best way.
I was going to save that for the last question.
What changed? So what was the hurdle? What changed? How did you solve that?
Look, I think everyone asks, like, what is the challenge of implementing this in the business?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that we had a different challenge in year one. Because I think when, look, I think everyone here is probably familiar with the fact that when you're speaking to the high-level execs, everyone just wants to know about ROI, nothing else, right? So then when we say, like, oh, we have this advanced measurement capability that can possibly give us ROI, and then we're like, okay, let's solve all the problems in the world with this then, and let's measure everything. So it wasn't a problem to implement it, because then we went off and measured a lot of stuff. But then we realized that actually we didn't need to measure that many ROIs in the campaigns that we had, because the problems were other problems, right? And other things that we needed to measure. So then I think we weren't as involved as a village as well. So Analect and Meta, and like now we're being able to get in a room and have those conversations so everyone's on the same page. But we started off, let's do all these measurements, let's do all these things. And then when those results came back, a lot was inconclusive, a lot was not relevant for us. So then explaining that back to the business was the challenge. So I'll say that's the challenge that we had.
Trent, same question to you. Like, of course, you have implemented this with multiple businesses now. What's been the challenge? Like, what are the typical challenges that you see, you face, and you see the brands face as well? And how do you go about it?
Where to start? Like we overcomplicate everything in this industry, and I don't know why we do it, but we try not to, and we keep talking about it every year that we're going to simplify things, and we just make it more complicated. I think, look, the challenges are like, I try not to talk about the technology first and foremost anyways, but even being a technologist, I try and talk about, again, the use cases and what are we actually trying to do here. And developing the solution design can be harder than you think. You know, you have to think about, you know, all right, I don't know anything about how this campaign is set up and where it's structured and what formats are being used just yet. So what are we actually testing? I think making sure that you get that really clear across the business and take the client and everybody along that journey with you. We talk about this journey, but I mean, it starts from asking those questions, not going, oh, you know what, today I'm going to just wake up and use this clean room. Like, you know, so I think we just need to start from those kind of basics. But it can be challenging, and it can be technically complex and daunting, but I would just say, just start. Like, if you start testing something, at least you're in a better place than not testing anything.
It seemed like you wanted to add something.
Oh, no, I was just going to say the client can be a pain as well, right? But
Not all of them, not all of them.
Sure, let's say no to that. Okay, now let's stay with you. How has, like, when you're thinking about AI, so of course we don't, and I think you mentioned this as well, we don't want to do insight. We don't want to get insight if it's not actionable. And of course it has to drive some strategy, some decision. And you need to make sure that that new strategy is working as well. So there is a kind of like a feedback that needs to happen. How are you using AI right now? Is that something that you are doing? Is that something that has been, like you mentioned, it's a journey. Tell us about that journey in making sure that framework, like having that framework in and making sure that people are thinking about that feedback loop, like the validation of a strategy as well.
Well, I mean, you're going to get it wrong, like, and that's fine. I think, you know, we've done now many Meta AI instances across our group, across many different clients, across many different verticals, and the experience is almost the same for each one. it is setting up that framework so that you, again, know what you're testing.
Yep.
You have to keep it ongoing as well. I mean, there's no point to just test in a blue moon and then stop and start and stop and start again. Yep. So making sure that you try and embed it into that kind of, approach and decision making is really important.
I think I'll just add to that because I think that's a good point, right? Because the test and learn agenda is ever evolving and moving, right? So that's why we're doing it year after year with you guys as well, because first year we're trying to prove if data works or if data doesn't work. And then we want to prove if data works for different levels of the funnel. And then we want to prove what different audiences work and then what different data sources work. So it's always testing and going a level deeper as well each year. So I would say it's just knowing. I like to approach it first of what is the question that I want to answer instead of what is the decision that I'm trying to make. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Starting with the business questions that you have in mind and the problems you want to solve, like that's exactly what we have in the framework. Love it. Okay. Question for you, Trent. Exciting use cases that you haven't done yet, but you have it in the pipeline with data clean rooms, with AA. Something like exciting that you have planned, you want to talk about, not the, you talked about a random insight, like I even forgot what you mentioned.
Gamers like to prefer having a pet snake than a pet dog.
Yeah, so
but,
not that.
Do with what
anything else. Anything
else. Look, I think that the first exciting use case might be a little bit boring, but it is necessary. It's just continuing other clients' journey, and it is a journey, on measurement and incrementality tests, whether it's attribution or your MMMs, or all of them, which it should be. So I think it's just continuing on and trying to embed that into more clients is really exciting. But then the groundbreaking ones I do want to try is looking at sort of, offline impact and how that relates to sort of meta and campaign performance. How does real-world visitation data look like and impact your campaign when you're running against Meta? So doing tests around that with data partners, like maybe a Zero or so. That'll be interesting. And I think lastly, the query-based audiences that are now available as well, which brings it in line with other platforms as well, I would say. I think that can be really interesting because now you can run an experiment and then create also customized query and logic for your audiences off the back of those learnings. And then you can use that for better frequency management, better optimization, better sort of segmentation strategies. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I think the flexibility of each of these platforms, and AA included, is being able to both take the templatized approach and do that if you're just starting out, and then move towards sort of more customized queries and customized attribution models and whatever you want to do. So.
Yep, perfect. Now, we're going to wrap up, but as we wrap up, any words of advice? So anyone who wants to get started, maybe I'll start with you, Raf. Anyone who wants to get started with data clean rooms and Meta AA, what would you advise them on how to get started, how to think through this whole process of getting into this?
I think it is what I said before, right? So I think data clean rooms are about collaboration, data collaboration, but I think it was a lot of collaboration between all the parts involved in this as well, which we didn't do well in the first year, which then we saw that we didn't really get the results that we needed to and the answers that we needed to. Mm-hmm. So once we started to involve every part of that, everyone involved in that process into the conversation, having those conversations earlier and everyone being able to bring their expertise to the table to then set up a really good agenda for that year and all the studies that need to run that year for what we're trying to solve as a business. I think that is kind of the best way to go about it, because we didn't have all the answers, right? So like Trent and the team brought a lot of expertise on the data space and the platform. I don't come from media, right? I come from data, so I didn't know anything about media and I still had to do this. So it was just leaning into those expertise that really helped. And then now we set up the studies, we have the budget set aside as well. So we have that transparent conversation in the beginning, which really helps.
Perfect. Trent.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that, and then I've got another point I want to make if I don't stay on my train of thought. But yeah, I mean, it takes a whole skill set, and you're going to need your data scientists and your technical people, but don't let those guys just run amok and go into the clean room and just do their own thing and come up with all your business questions. Like, No, that's not it. And so at Analect, I mean, we're very agnostic in the technology, but we bring in now obviously our data scientists and our measurement folk and the people that can do the analysis, but we also bring in the strategists, the planners, the activation people from the agencies. We bring in the research team. You know, you need all these different point of views because they're going to come at you with different hypotheses, and then you're like, oh yes, we should be testing that. So, you know, kind of start there. Don't start at the technology point of view necessarily. And then I would also add, like, I mean, what we're doing for a lot of clients is we create essentially a scorecard, and it sounds really simple, but analyzing the data partners, but matching that with what first-party data you have available. And if you go, all right, I have these gaps in my first-party data, I know that I don't have the transactional point, I know that I'm only maybe collecting on my website, and maybe I haven't implemented conversions API or what have you, then that starts to kind of close those gaps, and you go, oh, now these are the right data partners and publishers and data vendors that I should actually work with, rather than the other way around. So that's where you should get started.
Cool. Thank you.
Excellent. We do have time for one question. And there's a good one in Slido, not to preempt anyone that's keen to. So it's a bit more on the sort of change management skills, or where you mentioned you're bringing together, you know, measurement experts, perhaps data experts, and perhaps some good old hardcore techies. Like, how do you manage the sort of upskill across all of those disciplines and sort of gradually grow together? Because it's a bit of a classic media problem. Is there any fails or wins in the experiences that you've had bringing talent along for the ride?
Who asked this question? Just solve the industry problems.
Yeah.
Like, it's important to bring everyone together for sure. You're going to have these different disciplines that are going to sort of argue with each other, and I would say that's good. Like, being argumentative a little bit is good. Ask the right questions, challenge each other, have your client challenge you in a nice way, and bring to the table then solutions and designs for these tests that you want to do. And you know, you're going to have to iterate. You're not going to always get it wrong, and that's why I wanted to talk about the failure to lead to success, because don't be afraid if you fail, and if your test goes, oh shit, these audiences have really low incremental lift, it might not be that they're performing badly. It might have just been for that specific test and what you were testing, they don't work for that campaign or that messaging or that piece of creative and channel. So, you know, try and bring everyone together and bring that thought process together. I mean, that's probably all I can say.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that creative tension can often be a critical part of it. So just a little note that there is an update to the related standards. Yes, it's a bit techie, but I do want to write something on that and provide a bit of guidance around it. 'Cause some other questions were a bit sort of how. So those specs are called the Publisher Advertiser Identity Reconciliation. So we want to sort of put something together for that. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.